What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Trust the Bank podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube platforms and you guys want to hear the next couple segments of this recording, you can go check it out on podcast platforms as well. Because we are going to be talking about Jordan Davis. We're going to be talking about James Cook. Funny enough, two Georgia Bulldogs. Didn't even think about that. Just realized that right now. Shout out to the Georgia Bulldogs. But they visited the Ravens, so we'll talk about the potential of drafting them, our thoughts on them. But this initial video has to go out to the main man. Shout out. I don't want to give a long intro because I feel like then it'll start to get really negative. Miles Boykin. Miles Boykin was released by the Ravens yesterday and today ended up actually getting claimed off waivers by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think first of all, we talk about Miles Boykin, letting him go, our thoughts on that. But then also, I think, after that, we talk about a little bit of like wide receivers. Should the Ravens try and replace him and whatnot? But Joshua, what are you thinking, man? We lost Greg Roman's favorite wide receiver.
Hey, I mean, when I talk about cut casualties, moving, making space, giving us some more money, it was Jalen Ferguson, it was Justice Hill, it was Miles Boykin. So I mean, we got one out of the three out the facility. I'm not going to say like oh, he's never going to have a career in the NFL. No, I wouldn't. I'm not going to say that. He's just not going to have a promising career with the Baltimore Ravens because honestly, he got drafted as a wide receiver. He just was out of sync, since he's been in the facility. I mean, he has tried, to make himself available, make himself, be that wide receiver, that go-to guy, but it just hasn't been able to click. And sometimes it's not always the guy's fault. I mean? Granted, sometimes you didn't always see him, go to Arizona or the West Coast to work out with the guys in the offseason. He was always doing his own workouts and things of that nature. We didn't know the story behind that. And I'm pretty sure we won't know the story behind that, which is totally fine. But it's nothing against his work ethic or what he wants to do or, how he perceives himself in the NFL. It's just, a bad relationship. Sometimes, you got to cut your losses. And me personally, I feel like if you was going to keep Miles Boykins, you should have, converted him to a flex tight end. No disrespect to him. It just, if you're still going to be a piece on this team, let's use you to your full ability. Let's get the mismatch. And, let's not miss out like we did on Darren Waller. So I mean, I'm kind of happy. I'm gonna be honest that he's gone because, in my opinion, it did seem like he was just taking up a roster spot. Yes, he did play a little bit of special teams and things of that nature, but at the same time, he just wasn't cut. He just wasn't cutting it for me. But at the end of the day, I do wish the best of him. He's still under 30. He can go somewhere and be a big body perennial wide receiver for any team. I mean, look at Chase Claypool, and now look at him being with his former teammate in Pittsburgh. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, Miles Boykin has the physical attributes to be really good. One of the problems is Baltimore doesn't utilize wide receivers, especially to the skill set that Miles Boykin possesses. We didn't get to see a lot of it, but there were flashes of Miles Boykin, right? I think my favorite play for Miles Boykin was Lamar Jackson in Seattle in the rain, first drive of the game, 53-yard pass to Miles Boykin, makes a great play. Like, that was when I was like, oh, let's go. Rookie Miles Boykin, this dude is going to be it. But unfortunately, whether he couldn't get on, John Harbaugh's love list or he couldn't get on Lamar Jackson's radar, whatever it was, he was unable to, have the impact that a lot of people were hoping he would have. And we talked about it plenty of times on stream. Like, just because we want to trade Miles Boykin or release him doesn't mean he's bad. It just means that for him to succeed, it's not going to be in Baltimore, right? Now, I'm a bit disappointed he went to the Steelers of all places because now we got to play against him, which is a bit unfortunate. But I did tweet out, though. I thought it was pretty funny because I tweeted out saying at least we don't have to worry about him leaking out the playbook to the Steelers because everyone already knows it. I felt like that was kind of clever.
Yeah,
Shout out to the Twitter if you guys want to check it out at @TTB_Ravens. Shameless plug. But the Ravens, they really just used him as a blocking tight end, right?
pretty much.
I mean, blocking wide receiver, I guess. And they would put him out there in 3rd and 1 in very short situations, and they would most of the time have him block or run some basic rudimentary route that probably didn't have a chance to succeed from the beginning. And I think a lot of people took out a lot of frustrations on Miles Boykin. But, I think he's a solid player. I have nothing against him. Obviously, I'm wishing for him the best. I'm wishing for his team to fail, but I hope he does have a good career in Pittsburgh. Just not against the Ravens. But, when we look at the Ravens losing Boykin, right, I feel like that opens up a hole. That opens up a hole on this team for that big body wide receiver because, the last couple of years we've been talking. Ravens should get a big body, right? It was Terrace Marshall versus Rashad Bateman. And the perk of Terrace Marshall was his size at 6'4". And everyone was like, well, hold on. We have Mr. Miles Boykin. He can be that guy. And then he started having injuries. And now we're sitting there in this draft, and there are 2 massive wide receivers that are great prospects. Number 1 being Drake London, arguably the best wide receiver in the draft class. But number 2, Christian Watson, a potential 2nd-round pick, freak athlete, 4'3", 40-yard dash, 6'5", crazy athlete. There's also other, big wide receivers like George Pickens at 6'3".
Let's not forget our other Bulldog now.
Don't worry. There's other guys. He's just not as big as the really big guys. But, Treylon Burks is 6'3". There's guys with good size. But, the biggest thing is, do we need that size? And should we go to the draft to get it? And if we go to the draft, do you think drafting a receiver early now is more reasonable? Because when we had Boykin, it was like, going receiver in the 2nd round, that's tough. Because we have Miles Boykin, it seems like the Ravens really want to use him. Now is it like, hey, round 2, if the right guy's available, do we pull that trigger? Or do we wait and be, once again, the Baltimore Ravens be like, all right, we're not taking a wide receiver till the 4th or 5th round like we did with Jordan Lasley and Jaleel Scott and, James Prochet, Tylan Wallace, those late round wide receivers. We drafted other players, Devin Duvernay, Hollywood, Rashad Bateman earlier in the draft. But we like to draft the guys really late. Could we go a little bit earlier? When was the last time? I don't even know the last time we drafted a round 2 wide receiver was. But could we go after round 2? Or potentially, if the Ravens trade back in the 1st round and a guy slides, a guy like Treylon Burks or Drake London, could the Ravens end up snagging another 1st rounder early wide receiver?
I like the way that you put about the Jordan Lasley, the Aaron Millett's, the Marvin Browns, another 4th rounder guy,
Chris Moore.
There we go. I don't know why I want to keep on calling him Clarence. I think we did have a Clarence in the early 2000s that played wide receiver for us. But either way, those guys really didn't pan out. So, if you're going to get a wide receiver, I think it is best for us to get a wide receiver between the 1st and 3rd round. Now, am I saying get a wide receiver at 14? No, TTB family. No, Ravens flock. I'm not saying that. So, please, in the comments, do not try to crucify me. All I'm saying is, if the Ravens do find themselves back in the 1st round, why not go out there for another wide receiver? Or maybe if they don't get an edge rusher, maybe get that corner. Or if they don't get that corner, if they get that corner, maybe get an edge rusher. Or the best player available is a wide receiver that's later in the later rounds. If you're going to keep, I feel like this time around it will be different because we do have Keith Martin, and T. Williams. I'm getting
flip flop.
Okay. T. Martin, Keith Williams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I get it mixed up too.
Thank you, McConnell. So we got these guys, in the facility that they get a lot of praise around the football spectrum about how they help them with their footwork, help them with their route running, things of that nature. We have a new, assistant QB coach. So, having another wide receiver on a rookie contract to help out, our franchise QB, our stellar QB, someone that we now are on the back end of his rookie contract are now giving him some weapons. I say, why not go for it? Because I mean, you definitely need to, in my opinion, either put Hollywood or Rashad Bateman in the slot, let either one of them work on that outside, and you need someone on the opposite outside to be a distraction and also be able to catch the ball, stretch the field, and give you, positive yards. I mean, that's something we have truly been missing out on.
Yeah, I mean, when you're, I think once again, whenever we're talking about the draft and we bring up possibilities, everyone always associates that with us saying this is the greatest possible move that could ever be made. Like, no matter what it is, you're like, oh, maybe what if like we drafted this guy in the 5th round? People are like, are you kidding me? That is the most outlandish thing that you could ever say. Guys, just because we say there's a possibility of something happening and saying that we're not against it doesn't mean we think it's the greatest possible thing. But the Baltimore Ravens draft, how they typically do it is they go with the best player available within reason strategy. That means if they are sitting at, I don't know, pick 46, and someone like I don't know, someone that won't fall, let's say a Treylon Burks, a potential top 20 pick. He's available, right? He's going to be better than the edge rushers that are gone, right? If all the other edge rushers and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, do we really want to go after this guy? Maybe Petrie's gone and the other cornerbacks that, are associated with the Ravens, they're gone. The linemen that you want, whoever you want, they're gone, right? Would you rather get a starting caliber wide receiver that is very good, whether it's a Christian Watson, which I think would be a viable pick in the 2nd round, or a George Pickens in the 2nd round? I think those are very worthwhile. Or a Treylon Burks if he somehow fell or something like that. That's more worthwhile than getting a 2nd tier, 3rd tier type of player at maybe a bigger position of need. But the thing is, if we draft a wide receiver in the 2nd round, I don't think we're going to do it in the 1st round unless we traded back and had multiple 1st round picks or something like that. Maybe I think Detroit has pick 32 and pick 34. So like we could take one with pick 34, which is basically a 1st round pick. That would be totally fine. But like, unless we're trading back, I don't see us taking wide receiver. But that means we likely took a player at a position of need in that 1st round. If we're sitting there at pick 46 with a wide receiver, I'll just say Christian Watson for right now. Totally fine. Insert whatever wide receiver you guys want. But let's say we got in the 1st round, we got ourselves a Jermaine Johnson, or we got ourselves a Derek Stingley, or whoever in the 1st round. That's a position in need. That's a player of need. That's a top tier player. Well, now 2nd round, well, we already got a corner, or we got an edge rusher. We could probably get another one in the 3rd round. Whereas the top tier wide receivers, it's harder to get somebody to fall, and the wide receivers in the 3rd and 4th round, there's some good players. Do not get me wrong on that. However, they're not the type of players that the Ravens need. The Ravens need that bigger body type of player. That's the Christian Watson. That's the Treylon Burks. That is the George Pickens. The wide receivers later in the draft that are seen, I mean, that's Jahan Dotson. That's John Mechie. That's Sky Moore. That's Calvin Austin. Those are much smaller wide receivers. They're great players, don't get me wrong, but it's tougher to get. Then you can wait a lot farther and wait for the 5th round or something like that to go after a Justin Ross or Jalen Tolbert. But that's, the Ravens don't use 5th round picks, right? At least not at the wide receiver position. They do use 5th round picks at corner. They use them at edge rusher. They utilize those guys. Yeah. But at wide receiver, unless you're picked really early, you're probably not going to get a lot of play time. So, and I think edge rusher, I think a lot of people are underestimating the edge rush core that we have. Like, we have Adafe, who's going to be out there every snap. And then we have Tyus Bowser, who will be out there almost every snap. He just sometimes won't be at edge. And then we have other players that can play edge. Dalen Hayes, Jalen Ferguson. Like, we have players that we can throw out there. Right? So, getting depth there is totally fine. Cornerback, yes, it's a need. 1 and 2 we have. But we need that 3, 4, 5. Well, if we draft 3 early, where could we use players that help? Offensive line we'd be drafting for depth most likely, unless it's a tackle for the first couple games.
Yeah.
Why not go for wide receiver and show your quarterback that you're trying to extend, that you're giving him the weapons to succeed? Because, guys, I'm going to say this right now. I don't think Marquise Hollywood Brown is going to be in Baltimore. I don't think he resigns in Baltimore because I think he's going to want a lot of money and the Ravens won't have it. I think he wants to be in Baltimore. I think the Ravens want him in Baltimore, but I think he's going to want too much money and I think it'll be too difficult. Well, we got to make sure that Lamar has weapons for the next 4 years under contract. Next 4 or 5 years, right? We have Duvernay, a couple years left on his deal, but, he could go somewhere else, right? We have a lot of guys where it's like, hey, they're coming off their rookie contract. We don't know how much longer they're going to stay. Maybe we can keep some of them. But drafting a new player could allow the Ravens to say, like, Lamar, we have Bateman for you. We have a 5th-year option on him. He's going to be your guy, but we're also giving you a number 2, right? What is a quarterback, a young cornerback? He may be playing in the AFC North that not only got a wide receiver, 1 in the 2nd round of his draft, but then they went back and they were like, hey, we got you that really good player last year. We're going to draft another great wide receiver for you, and we're going to get you to the Super Bowl with a Mr. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I'm just saying, right? They had T. Higgins. They were chilling.
You're not lying, though. You're not lying.
They were chilling with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Like, that was a good wide receiver core. And they were like, Joe, we got you. We're going to give you the weapons that you need to be a prolific passer in the NFL. Because we don't know how much longer Tyler Boyd's going to be here. We don't know how, a lot about the other wide receivers on this team. I think they drafted Chris Evans as well. The Ravens got to look at Lamar Jackson and be like, yes, we have Hollywood. We just lost Boykin. We have potential in Prochet. We have potential in Duvernay. But the main piece that we know is here to stay and will be a prominent piece is Rashad Bateman. That's all that we know of for the Ravens passing offense. Now, I hope Talon Wallace balls out. I hope James Prochet balls out. I hope Duvernay, and I hope all those guys ball out. But the only one that we know for certain is going to be here with a prominent role for the next couple of seasons. It's Devin Duvernay. I'm sorry. Not Devin Duvernay. It's Rashad Bateman. I boofed that one a bit.
I think in your heart you want Devin Duvernay to have that.
Oh yeah,
no,
exactly.
I totally that.
Manifesting it. But if we give him that other guy and say, hey, this is your wide receiver duo, if we get him in the 2nd round, that's 4 years. Him and Rashad Bateman will be a 1-2 punch for the next 4 years, guaranteed. Right? You can hope Hollywood comes back. But Hollywood, the wide receiver market has just exploded this year. I mean, it's nearly doubled for, rotational wide receivers, right? Like, Hollywood's going to want more money than Christian Kirk. The Ravens don't have that kind of money. The Ravens can't pay Hollywood $20 million. They can't pay him $15 million. But I think Hollywood's deserving of a good $15 million. He's probably going to go somewhere else because I think he deserves it. I think he's really good. Now, if he takes a pay cut and stays with Baltimore, props to him. I'd love that. But, guys, getting a solidified 1-2 punch could be fantastic. Whether it's a Christian Washington or a George Pickens or a Treylon Burks. Hey, maybe Drake London falls. The Ravens trade back. They snag him. Whatever it is. I think it'd be worthwhile. Because of the loss of Miles Boykin. Before it was like, yeah, I'm down with taking a wide receiver 2nd round, but now I feel like targeting one could be really smart for the Ravens to do. If they really target one and try and trade up for one or trade back and snag one, whatever it is, I'm with it now. Now that we've lost Miles Boykin, because Miles Boykin was taking up those snaps when the Ravens needed a bigger body out on the field.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's no disrespect to Miles Boykin. It's just my thing is, if you're going to be on the field, let's utilize you in a way where you can really, be a threat. When you put Nick Bull out there, if I'm a defender, like, hey, Nick Bull, we got 2 tight ends out here. We know it's possibly going to be a run play. You put Miles Boykin out there, you know to a certain extent, but you don't know. I mean, he can give you an element of surprise. So I'd rather have a wide receiver that okay, we got we you know we in a, we got our three wides, single back, and we got one tight end. Let's work out. Let's stretch this field. Let's use this whole field, and let me take my big man up there and stretch them guys, stretch out the defense on that half. I got somebody working underneath. I got somebody hitting a hitch, tending out, something like that. I feel like if we bring in another threat, the creativity that wasn't there has to be now implemented. Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, it still can be no creativity, but the more weapons you have, the more you have to be creative on with the offense. I mean, we saw. I'm gonna keep on going back to that Miami game. Miami was damn near down everybody, but they found a way to be creative enough to to still give us a run for our money and still part the win. They still had weapons. They still had guys that that can catch the ball. They still had guys that that were speedsters. They still had a decent enough quarterback that could get the job done. So, I mean, if we can bring in another weapon, especially for Lamar Jackson, I mean, we really don't know how things are looking for Marquise. I know Marquise is rehabbing his injury. I know he'll be back soon. Hopefully, he takes his 5th-year option and plays on it. But if we make it to the Super Bowl this upcoming season, it's going to be a lot of contract talk with a lot of guys, especially start with Lamar and Hollywood Brown. So I definitely agree with rebuilding in the draft.
Yeah, and if the Ravens had 5 picks in this draft, I wouldn't be saying draft a wide receiver early. Yeah. But we have 10 picks. That gives flexibility at some points to take best player available. Not in every single time. But if the guy is there in the 2nd round, I think you pull that trigger. If a guy slides into the 3rd round, like a Christian Watson or somebody falls into the 3rd round, it's like, oh, you take him. Yeah, sure, there may be an edge rusher available. But that edge rusher is not going to be as impactful, I believe, as, those players on the Ravens offense. So, I think that's solid for Miles Boykin, guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, check out the podcast, check out the rest of the segments. But let's